Our narrowboat hasn't always looked like this.
And that's because we bought this boat as a restoration project. And over the last few weeks, we have completely stripped this boat back to a bare shell. And now we're slowly bringing it back to life. As well as rebuilding our boat, we're also upgrading it to be the ultimate floating home. And one of those upgrades means we have got to cut a hole in our roof.
Before we go cutting any holes out in our boat, we've got a frame to make.
And we're going to be making that frame out of the angle iron that we actually used on the floor inside. So as you can see, some of it is painted and some of it isn't, but that doesn't really matter. We just need to mark it out and get cutting with our angle grinder. That is one of 8 miters I've got to do. So we're just going to make sure that is as straight as we can possibly get it. The better I cut these miters now means less work after. So I'm trying to be as accurate as I can be with all of the cuts that I do with the grinder. With the first 2 done, we get on with marking the second 2. And because this is going to be a rectangle, they need to be the exact same length. That is 2 sides to our frame cut, so these are the exact same length, which is obviously important on a square. Now we can do the ends. It's going to be a rectangle, not a square fill. So the next 2 are going to be slightly smaller than the first, but it's still important that they both match in length exactly. So get on with marking those with the measurements that we've already got written down and get them cut. That is our 8 miters and our 4 pieces cut. Now we're going to use this. So this is a different disc. This one's for grinding. And we're just going to clean up any bits of metal. So if you look at it, look, all these little bits, we want to get all them cleaned off and also remove a bit of paint. This takes a little bit more time, but it's going to save us time in the long run. So we get all of our cuts cleaned up and move on to removing some of that paint. As I said before, some are painted and some are not because we are recycling. But that's alright, we like to save things where we can. With everything cut and cleaned, I get them set up on the trestles.
Before Phil squares up that frame, I want to let you guys know what we're up to. And we're fitting a skylight to our narrowboat.
And that is why we're making this frame. So this frame is designed to go on top of our boat and it's going to give us a nice flat surface to mount our glass. Now that you know what it's for, let's get on with tacking in our miters once I'd squared it all up. We've tacked our 4 corners and also moved so where the welder can actually reach. Stupid. Now we've got one more job before we fully weld, and that is to get the top flat. So if I put a level across like this, you can see it's touching on the outside and there's a gap on the inside. Obviously we want this completely flat for the glass, so I'm going to use my trusty smasher and twist the bars and get them nice and flat. Just like when we did our miters, I'm spending more time getting this perfect now to save time in the future. So we keep adjusting it until it's perfect, and then we can get some more tacks on the back side, and that's going to stop it from moving so we can fully weld this out. Oh, it's lovely. Right, I'm happy with that. So now we can weld all of these miters fully out. I didn't think about that either. I'm just not thinking very much today. These trestles are plastic.
Wait, let me come out.
Oh man, they're brand new as well. With our trestles ruined, I take the workpiece and move it down onto some concrete blocks. That way it's a bit more safer and we can fully weld out all of our miters. With them welded out, I get the grinder out and start flattening it all off because this needs to be perfect. That is our frame complete. Before we install it, I'm going to put a little bit of primer on it. For those who watched the last episode, you'll know that we used a 2-pack primer on our boat, and that is exactly what we're going to put on this eventually. We're just doing this temporarily to make sure we don't get any rust on our metal. And that is the frame complete. While we let that paint dry for 48 hours, we're going to get up here and remove the boot for the old chimney that we're not going to be using anymore. When we bought Bessie, it had a log burner inside and obviously a chimney, which is this boot here. But we've decided to make the most of the space, we're not going to be reinstalling it. And as easy as that, the boot comes off. With the boot removed, the next job is to clean up all of that old paint.
What's Bessie been through, Phil?
She's had some primer, some green, some primer, some green, then some grey primer and some green. So I like the selection of colours this has gone through. Then they was like, let's put some primer on, and then we'll put some white on, and then we'll cover that with some green.
And now we're here.
Taking it off.
In primer.
Let's put some primer on, and some green. History lesson over, I get on with removing the last of the paint. With that all gone, I get the hoover out just to clean up around the area we've been working, and I'm going to prime over it with some more zinc primer. Remember, this is only temporary. We need to take this back off eventually and put that 2-pack primer on. Old chimney is removed. Now we're going to use our existing windows to get some marks up onto the roof, because we want our skylight to be central to these 2 front windows. That's the plan. And because the boat isn't level, all we can do is mark straight lines up off the edges, and that's exactly what we do, and with those we try and mark across the roof. Change of plans. Originally we was going to chalk line to get our nice straight base, it's too much. So now I'm going to have to get a laser. Plan 1 aborted. I clean off all of the chalk before breaking out the laser and lining up between the marks we made from the windows and transferring it all onto the roof. Now we need the centre, because we want it bang centre on our roof. So to do that, I'm literally just going to measure up and over. I take a rough measurement to the middle, both sides, and then I split the difference, and that gives us a perfect centre for our new skylight. And that's it all marked out.
The main reason we're putting a skylight in, because narrowboats can feel claustrophobic and dark, so we're going to open this up as much as we can and make it feel light and airy.
As well as marking the roof, we also need to put some marks onto our frame. That way when we take it up, we can line everything up and make sure it's where it's meant to be. What we're looking at, that there is the centre of our boat. So that's why I've marked that. And you remember I've marked the sides of the window up onto the roof. That is these 2 lines. So when we take this up, we can line everything up and make sure it's lovely. That's the frame in its final position. Because our roof is like, but our frame is like, we need to actually scribe these end pieces. So you see, look, I don't know if you can see my little finger here, look, hello. The way we're going to do it, we're going to set the gaps equal, so that this is equal, and then we're going to scribe the 2 ends. When you're working on a boat, you have to do everything a little bit differently. So if this was a building, we'd have our levels and we'd make sure it's level and then mark it. But because it's a boat, it's more about measuring the spaces. So once we'd set it square to the roof, I mark out the difference, which is this round arch you see me cutting here, and I get that removed before breaking out the grinder again and cleaning all of the edges, ready for it to be welded into position for a final time. It's finally time to actually cut the roof, so this is definitely a one-time thing. And the idea is, this is what we're thinking anyway, we're going to cut along the inside of the frame. That way it gives us some steel to weld along the outside of the frame. With our plan in place, I get on with marking out our new opening, and we're going to be cutting this out using an angle grinder. Once it's marked, we can get the frame out of the way, right, see ya on it, and there comes the grinder. These are just normal metal cutting discs, and it does take a little bit of time, but it does a really clean job.
That is the hole all cut out. All that's holding it is the timber that's going across the roof, and we're just going to multi-tool them out now.
And because we added adhesive when we installed our new battens, they're not going to go anywhere when we cut through them. So future planning has worked out. and we let Brad get on with doing a bit of work.
Yay! We got a hole in the roof!
Homemade. Now we're going to clean the edges for where our frame is going to sit. Because we're welding our frame in position, obviously we need clean steel, and that's exactly what we do using our grinder, removing all of the paint. Frame is in place and it fits lovely. Something that has happened, obviously we've cut a big bit of the structure out. If you look there, look, you see that gap? So the roof's dropped slightly. It's happened on both sides. Plan, we're going to use this clamp like so. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp that bit of roof back together.
Welders on site, up here on the second floor, ready to do something.
When I installed this, I tack it first, making sure to move that clamp around with me so that the roof is nice and tight. That way we're not going to have any gaps between the frame and the roof. Just with the tacks, everything is strong again. Thankfully. So now we can fully weld it out. With my 2 hours of welding training, I'm now going to have to fully weld out this frame, and it was quite a job because it's a little bit close on gaps, so I'm having to squeeze down into the space to weld, but I think I did an alright job.
Today is a very nerve-wracking moment at the boat because we're getting it surveyed. And hopefully it's in good condition, but if the report comes back and it's bad, we may have to do a lot more work.
This is something you should definitely do before you purchase a narrowboat. But lesson learned, and here we are today. After reading through all of your comments, we finally booked in Nick to come and inspect our narrowboat. Something super interesting that Nick just said. If you look here, we've got 5.6, 5.6, 5.5. Right on this weld line here, it changes to 4.9, 4.9. So he's saying that section there is a different piece of steel. So that would have been a different thickness when it was made. Again, more things that you guys have already told us. These springers are known for using second-hand steel, so it makes sense that the different panels vary in thickness ever so slightly.
Nick, are you impressed?
Brad did sign a false out. He signed a false out.
So far.
Is it the springer that's going to surprise everyone?
I think it could be.
The reason it's going to be surprising is springers are known for their poor quality when it comes to steel.
What we're doing, we've put in the pin depth gauge into one of the pits just to measure the pits on it.
And what he does is that measurement of the pit is then deducted from the thickness of steel that's around it. And we're hoping that we haven't got anything under 4mm. So that's going to be the lowest that we want to see. That way we know that one of you guys will be able to insure it when you win it.
That is the first half of the boat inspected. Nick is currently round this side, working his way around the second half, and so far, so good, I think.
That is one way of jinxing it, Brad. Just be quiet until it's all over.
Is it okay if we be a part of the test? Can we test 3 bits with you? With adult supervision?
Adult supervision, go on then.
Philly? Nick's going to let you have a go of the expensive machine.
That's it. There you go, you can have the chalk as well, we can do that as well.
I don't write, I don't write good. Here.
Yeah, that's 5.7. That's it.
I did a different 7 to him, now he's just going to throw him right off.
It.
Where else? Underneath
Yeah,
here?
that's it.
Oh, these are lovely numbers.
What did we get?
I'll tell you what, this is awkward writing with this. After delaying Nick, we moved out of the way and let him get on with testing the rest of our boat, including the swim. Nick is now measuring, not this bit, he's measuring up, what is that bit called?
The superstructure.
So, the superstructure, I knew that, I was just testing him. This doesn't get measured as thoroughly, but obviously we still want to measure it to make sure it's good. From here down, this is what Nick was telling me, tell me if I'm wrong, that's obviously super important, that's why there's so many tests done along the bottom bit. What is that? Hole. After impressing Nick with our boat terminology, he asked us to get out of his way so we could get on with testing more of the boat. Nick's actually due to come back once we've progressed on our boat. This is only mainly for the steel and the hull, so eventually he will have to come back and see us again. That is our survey done and it's looking like great success. So now we can move on to some more upgrades, and one of those is extending our windows. So while we was at Caldwell Windows, they actually suggested going up by about 100 mil. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Just like everything else on our boat, we're not using levels as they should be used. We're just using them as a straight edge. So using the existing lines from the window, we're extending it up to our new measurement. That's our first window marked out, so now all we need to do is cut it. To cut these out, just like the Skylight, I'm using a metal cutting disc on my grinder. I don't think that's how they cut the originals. I'm pretty sure they used a plasma cutter, but because we've insulated, we need to keep the heat down to a minimum. That's the first window cut out, and seeing as we've only took that much away, look at how different that looks. That looks massive. So let's get on with the other 9 more. I've now swapped over to, what are these, welding gloves, because my hand, so we've just done 2 corners. My hand is not feeling super fresh at the moment. It's so hot. Let's try these. After trying to be brave and suffer no gloves, I then moved on to a thin set of gloves that melted, and now I've got the proper PPE on and I can get on with cutting out the other 9 windows without burning myself.
While Phil's cutting out that window, if you're enjoying the boat series, what have got to do, Jay?
Like and subscribe, hit the bell button.
We're like a rubbish version of Top Gear because we've exposed the stig already.
Yeah.
As well as the sides, we're also doing the 2 windows that are up on the bow of the boat. And you'll notice, not only are we extending the height, we're squaring the bottoms. So when we was at Caldwell Windows, that is something that they suggested.
That's one half of the boat with all the windows cut out, and as you can see, I think it looks great. Phil, what do you think? I'm coming round. Where Phil? He's hiding. Phil, where Phil? This side's not been done, and the transformation already is crazy. We think it looks good.
It's worth it. I worked it out. I think it's just under 20% increase.
So, shall we do the other side?
Yeah, why not? Let's both together do the other side. Me and Brad, hand in hand, then got on with the last of the windows on the other side. And although we're only increasing it by about 20%, if that, the impact it's made is massive. There is so much more light in this boat. And as easy as that, I've cut all the windows out. It definitely didn't take hours and hours and hours. But, what a transformation. That's the windows cut out. Next step on operation renovation, we've been putting it off quite a bit, but that is to go round and remove all of the old little buttons or fasteners, all these little hooks, because obviously that canopy is no more. So let's get that done. That didn't take a lot. Most of the old fixings were made of aluminium, so I was able to drill them out easily, and some of the screws still worked. So I used the screwdriver to remove those. I've removed most of the clips that I can get to, so like these little hooks that were here. These ones are seized, so it's time to move on to the Persuader 3000, and we've got those to remove and those to remove. After removing quite a few seized screws on this boat, I figured out that if you put a cross through the screw, they pretty much just pop off with little effort. So that's the way that I've been removing all of the C screws on all of these brackets. And as you can see, it doesn't take a lot to get them off. I think I've removed all of the clips and little brackets now. So I'm going to use this grinding disc. I'm going to flat it all off and put a bit of primer on it. These are jobs we could have done before sandblasting and it would have saved us a bit of cleaning, but you live and learn, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So we're having to grind off the paint because we want everything back to bare still when we come to add in that 2-part primer at the end. And as well as the back, we've also got bits and pieces on the side, and we do the exact same thing on those. That way there's none of the original paint left.
That was a small job that needed to be done nonetheless.
Next job is not a repair like we just did. The next one's another upgrade, and that is this. So these clocks were made back in 1989, and they're very good. They've got a nice swift movement and they work great. But anyways, we need to bring them up to standards. They're super old, so we're going to remove this, but at the same time, go round to the back of the boat, Brad. You will see that that thing there is very close to the door, and I just don't like how it looks. So, plan. This is going to get put in the centre, and we're also going to be putting it on a diet, because at the minute it's this wide, and we want it to be this wide. We start off by removing the old panel with the 4 screws holding it in place, drag it out, and we could also pull out the last of the wiring remaining on this boat. That is something else. Control panel gone, we can now turn our attention to the box itself. This was only held in with a few tacks and also some strange adhesive, so we cut all that and start chiseling it off. But remember, we don't want to destroy it completely because we're going to be reinstalling it, but slightly modified. With the box off, we turn our attention to this very overbuilt trunking. This is made out of 5mm steel. And now we can clean up the area where it was mounted. That is the whole bit cleared, so the trunking and the box, we're going to modify that box and then we can reinstall it. Before I go modifying this, I've just jumped onto Google. So I was just looking at some of the newer gauges and I've worked out that we want about 50mm, but that's got to be from obviously the tabs to the face. That works out to 90mm. So we're actually shaving off 60mm, which is actually, that's a lot. Like, we're gonna lose all of that. And to slim it down, all I do is mark all the way around that 60mm and use my grinder to cut it down. Shut-up! That is the new thickness. How much nicer is that? A lot nicer. Now that our box has been put on a diet, I can measure the size and start marking out for its new position. And we're going to use the door as a reference point because that is one of the only things that's actually square. Clean off the primer again, ready for welding. And we're also going to be using the top of the door to set it flat.
I do want to do a big shout out to Artec Welding. This ain't a sponsored ad, but this machine here has helped us out so much through the build.
We did not realise how much welding was going to be done. I'm basically a professional. We reattach the box as it was before, so we just add some tacks into the corners and into the middles, and then we'll be adding some adhesive when we come to fully paint our boat. That's how it was before, so I'm sure it's going to be fine now. Upgrade done. Next thing we've been avoiding, and we should have done it ages ago, and that is to make sure this tank is fully drained, and then the plan is to fill it up with water. This is definitely not advised. Do not do this at home. Remember, do as I say, not as I do. Definitely do not be sucking diesel into your mouth. Right. Plan B.
Ignore plan A.
That was taking too long. And now we're going to drain the fuel. Now we're going to drain the diesel. Now we're going to siphon the diesel. And it's easy as that. That is all of the diesel drained out of the tank. Next job is to fill it with water. We're going to fill this up all the way up to the very top. That is going to remove any gases, because we don't want gases when we attack this bottom section down here. Turn it on, over.
Is it coming through? Over.
No, over. Yes, over. So this here is our tank vent, which is going to be changed because I don't like that either. We need that water to be to the very top. Basically, we're just eliminating all of the gas to the brim. Yeah?
Great success.
I can't believe Brad let me film all of that bit of content with a sausage roll wedged in my beard. So I'll remember that for next time. Anyway, food removed, I get on with cleaning up the back part of our swim because we need to do some modifications. We've got someone coming down, you might know him, and he thinks he's just coming down to measure, but that's not going to happen. So that's why I'm trying to prep this as quick as I can, because he's about to get himself an extra little job. We use a wire wheel to remove the paint, and we use it on a grinder. It takes a little bit of elbow grease because this 2-pack primer is super strong.
Bob has driven down here. He's from the machine shop. You may have seen him on many channels and also his channel, but he's come down to help us on the boat. What are you going to do for us, Bob?
Help you on the boat.
While you're here, he didn't plan to do any work, but can you help us do this little bit of welding here?
Absolutely.
It works! It works!
On our report, this is for everybody this, on our report basically what Nick was saying, because you can see the edge of the plate here, he would like us to have a weld that wraps over the existing weld. This was actually only an advisory, it wasn't too bad, but remember when we're building this boat we want it to be the best that it can be. So we got Bob on the welder, he gave us some tips on how to cover up the existing weld, and once he had shot off I carried on with the second half. And that is our advisory completed. How much better does that look? And of course a little bit of temporary primer to prevent it from rusting while we do even more work. To complete the weld around the edge, we need to move our sleepers. So the idea is we're just going to try and shift these back, and that's going to give us a chance to also get that point where we didn't sandblast underneath. We lift the boat up with our 20-ton bottle jack, and we just shift our sleepers back ever so slightly, just enough to access those points.
That is the boat all repositioned. Phil's going to lower the boat back down. That leaves this bit of weld to join back up, so we're going to add weld. As you can see, we're going to have to clean this back.
That is the little advisory on the back finished, so we put that weld over it. Bob's gone, but he's going to be back very shortly. You'll see him in a minute. This is the hole for the old chimney, and obviously we don't want it in our boat, so I've got to cover it up. So we're going to cut it a bit neater than whoever cut this and patch it in. Time for some more marking. We're cutting this as tight as we can to the hole. We don't want to remove too much of the roof. And another thing we're doing because of your comments is we're going to drill the corners so they've got a slight radius. That way we've got no square edges. And this should be a bit of a better job than our last repair. So we drill out the holes, get the grinder out and cut the main piece out of the way. And now we have a big hole in our boat ready to be repaired. Wow. This is the old section of roof that we cut out for our skylight. You may be thinking that we're being tight, but we're using it because it's already got the radius of our roof. And also, we're being tight. We mark out the old section of roof for our patch, mark it up and take our grinder and cut that out. And I also round off the edges because obviously they're radiused. Oh my god, it went in first time, I didn't even have to modify it. With our piece fitting first time, I get on with tacking it into position, so we're tacking it every couple of inches, and then I'm doing full welds, but I'm alternating from side to side to try and keep that heat down as much as possible. That's going to help prevent it from warping, and it's also going to prevent the insulation underneath from catching fire. That hole is now patched up. Obviously it's going to need some filling and some sanding, but that's not for now. Follow me. This is going to be more, I would call this an upgrade, because these are the original vents. This one's been added in at some point and they've chopped into the handrail, and I hate it because it's not symmetrical. So we're going to put this handrail back. And of course the screws are fully seized, so out comes the grinder to cut off the heads, and we can get that old vent removed before cleaning up more of the old paint. On this one, we're going to try something a little bit different, just to see if we ain't got to cut more metal, and that is to hold some paper over the top, and then I'm going to use my clean hands. I'm going to mark the edge of the hole that's already here. So let's get some arts and crafts scissors, cut out and see what happens. I've seen this method, so thought I'd give it a try, and it works out okay, I suppose. Definitely a factory panel we're about to put back in. With it all marked, I can get the grinder and cut this out. It takes a little bit of time because obviously these don't like to cut round. Here's our little weird odd egg shape. Now all we've got to do is slip it in. Oh my god, it fitted first time. What's the chances? Just like our other patch, we start off by tacking and then we add in some small sections of weld, alternating from side to side to try and keep that heat down as much as possible. Vent, what vent? So that's the vent covered in. Next up, we've got a gap in our rail. So I'm going to cut it here and then put a piece here. The tabs on the end have been added in when they did the vent. So we need to completely cut those out of the way before we can reattach the original section of bar. So with those removed, we get some new tubing and patch it in to the space that we've just created. The bars have got some weld on it, they're not finished yet. The next thing I've got to do is add this little tag, this little tab here, and that is to support, and it matches into the rest. So I'm assuming the original was cut when they added in that little vent. Oh. We cut the new tab out of a piece of steel to try and match it in to the ones that are already on the boat. That way it's going to look as factory as possible. With that added on, we grind back all of our welds as best we can. This will need filling, but that is the bar patched in. Handrails ready for filler. Next job is these drains for this front deck section. They're a bit far from the corner, so look, as you can see from all the dirt, it's getting stuck. So we're going to extend them up to this bulkhead. As well as moving them over to the bulkhead, we're also going to be lowering them all the way down to the floor. That way, the front section of floor in the bow is going to hold as little water as possible. And that's going to prevent a lot of rust in the future. We use the grinder to get the bulk of it out and remove some of the sides and drill out a little section as well. And we will be coming back to these to give them some nice rounded shape in the future before we paint. Another job that needed to be done up front was a small section of the tube that had rusted completely away. Another thing you just see me do is I've just patched in this main sort of tube. We've got another one to do over there. The reason we think that they're rotting is the boats like this, water is running down into here and it has nowhere to go. So we're actually going to drill some drain holes in those at the end. Remember, although we are restoring this as best we can, we're always trying to improve it. So anywhere we see where we can improve, like these weep holes, that's exactly what we're going to do and make this boat better than it ever was. The boat is looking lovely. Get back here. So the next job is the engine bay, because that doesn't look so lovely. But before we do that, we need to tackle the frame, because obviously we've got nothing to put our floor on. So let's tackle that now. That starts with removing any of the existing floor that's left, and also cleaning up metal for where we're going to be attaching our new floor. And that's exactly what I do with the grinder, cleaning off any of the paint and any of the old brackets. And now it's ready for its new floor. Bob's back, and that is because he is going to fabricate a floor that's actually removable. It is a bank holiday Friday, and it is nearly 4 o'clock. Bob forgot, and he couldn't get the size of steel we wanted, but we have a solution. We're going to be stacking 4 of these together to make up our new floor. Poor Bob forgot it was a bank holiday, so the shop wasn't open for the steel, but luckily we have a new plan. While Bob is tacking all the rest together, I'm going to start cutting these down to size. Some of these are getting cut straight to the length they need to be, and some we're just shortening because we will have to put them in position to mark up the strange angles that are inside of our boat. Second thing we couldn't get because it's bank holiday is the steel we're going to be using to make sort of little cups to hold our frame, so Bob's going to make them as well. The reason we want our floor to be removable is, if you remember when we removed the engine, it was an absolute nightmare. This way, everything's going to be accessible.
We have got it going on crazy at the minute. We've got Bob over here fabricating the brackets to pick the metal up. We've got Phil over there cutting the brackets to size. It's all going on, isn't it, Bob?
All going on.
It's all going on for me and Bob, at least. So while Bob was setting up to put our brackets that are going to hold our new floor, I was cutting more of those brackets, and this was simply to save time, because now it was getting to about 6 PM on a bank holiday.
If you're interested in doing stuff like this but you don't have the workshop or the skills, come see us at the machine shop, where we do welding lessons and supply you with tools.
And I promise you, he doesn't sell Sillet Bang. That was completely natural and unrehearsed, I promise. He definitely has never said that before. Serious, he has got a workshop where you can go in and use all of the tools, welders. It's quality, so we'll put the link in the description. Go check it out. Basically, Bob has got a pay-to-play workshop, so you can do things like this on small projects or even bigger projects. And once you finish, you walk away and you leave Bob to deal with all the mess. We now get on with the last of our tubes, and we're going to have a total of 4. And that is 1 removable floor installed. Oh my God! The engine's gone. We need to change it.
Go, Bob.
For us.
1. Oh my God. 2nd. Screw the new engine in.
This was quite a lot of work, but again, remember, we're always trying to upgrade, and I think this is one of the best upgrades we could do for that engine bay. Now everything's going to be completely accessible. Framing the boat is done for the engine, and unfortunately that is all we've got time for in this episode. Make sure you join us on the next one, but for now, we'll see you later.
Love you, bye. Boom. Going up.
Bing bong bang.